There's a specific kind of person who will apologize for something 3 days after it happened, not because anyone brought it up, but because their brain never let it go. The same person who replays a conversation on the drive home, edits what they should have said, and then lies awake wondering if the other person is still thinking about it. They're not, but you are. And if you just recognize yourself in that, this is going to be the most important thing you watch today. Because what's actually happening inside your head is nothing like what people have told you. And there's one thing in particular, something nobody talks about, that explains almost everything. We'll get there. Let's start at 2 a.m. You know that specific kind of awake, not the kind where you're stressed about something real, like a bill, a deadline, something coming tomorrow. This is the other kind, where you're replaying a conversation that ended 4 days ago, a sentence you said, the pause before someone responded, or whether your tone was slightly off in a meeting that nobody else even remembers. Your body is horizontal. Your brain is conducting a full criminal investigation. And the worst part, some part of you genuinely believes that if you just think it through one more time, you'll finally land on something and be able to sleep. You never do. Stick around because we need to talk about why. The first thing to understand is that what you're doing at 2 a.m. doesn't feel like suffering. That's what makes it so hard to stop. It feels like thinking. And for a certain kind of person, thinking feels like the most productive, most responsible, most natural thing in the world. Because for you, and maybe for as long as you can remember, thinking has been the thing that kept you safe. We'll come back to that. Because it's the whole story, really. Here's what's actually happening. Most people's brains have an off switch. When there's nothing urgent going on, things quiet down. They can just exist. Watch something. Sit in a car without narrating their entire life inside their own head. The overthinker's brain doesn't have that switch. It stays on. Running simulations, rehearsing conversations that probably won't happen, or filing away things that don't need filing, and generating a background monologue so constant that silence doesn't actually feel like silence. It just feels like the noise got louder. The result is a mind that is never fully off duty. And here's the part that surprises most people. That is not a flaw. That is the footprint of a very capable brain. The problem isn't how it thinks. It's that it never learned when to stop. Let's talk about someone. We'll call her Priya. Priya was the kid who always knew when something was wrong before anyone said it. She'd walk into a room and feel the tension before a single word was spoken. She'd notice her mom's jaw tighten, her dad's silence shift into something heavier. She wasn't told she was perceptive, she was told she was too sensitive, told to relax by people who had no idea that she couldn't. What nobody told Priya is that her brain wasn't overreacting, it was adapting. It had looked at her environment and made a very logical decision. If you can see what's coming before it arrives, you can protect yourself. You can make sure you're never caught off guard. And that worked. In that house, in that version of her life, it was actually a very smart strategy. The problem is the brain doesn't automatically update when the environment changes. So Priya grows up, moves out, builds a completely different life, and yet her brain is still scanning for threats that no longer exist. Still running the same program it wrote when she was 9. Does any of that sound familiar? Because if it does, here's what that actually means about you. It means you're not anxious for no reason. You learn to be vigilant for a very good reason. You just never got the memo that you're allowed to stop. Now, here's something most people don't know. Overthinking isn't one thing. It actually comes in two completely different flavors. The first kind is where you turn inward and genuinely try to understand something. Process a feeling, figure out what you actually want, make sense of why something affected you the way it did. When it works, this is actually a superpower. It's why overthinkers often understand other people better than almost anyone else in the room. The second kind is where your brain returns to the same problem over and over, not to solve it, not to move through it, just to circle it. The way your tongue keeps finding the sore spot in your mouth, even though touching it helps nothing. That version has a real cost. In your sleep, in your ability to make decisions, in the way a simple text message can spiral into an entire internal courtroom drama before the other person has even replied. And here's the part that makes this genuinely hard. Most overthinkers live in both, sometimes in the same hour. You start actually processing something, and then somewhere, quietly without warning, it tips. And because the thinking feels productive, it's almost impossible to notice when you've crossed from working through it to just going in circles. Psychologists call this the illusion of mental progress. Sit with that for a second. Because if you've ever spent 2 hours thinking about something and felt more confused at the end than when you started, that's exactly what that is. Your brain wasn't solving, it was just running. And here's the part nobody talks about: your brain actually rewards itself for this. Every time you think, even about something completely hypothetical and unresolvable, you get a tiny chemical hit. Not for finishing the thought, just for having it. So the loop keeps going because the loop feels just productive enough to justify one more lap. Your brain isn't torturing you. It is in its own deeply misguided way trying to help. It just cannot stop. This is why every person who has ever told you to just not think about it has never once actually helped you. That's not advice. That's someone describing a superpower they don't realize they have to someone whose brain literally isn't wired that way. So here's the question nobody asks. If overthinking costs this much, the sleep, the energy, the spirals, why do the people who experience it most tend to also be some of the most perceptive, most emotionally intelligent people you'll ever meet? Because the same brain that won't let you sleep at 2 a.m. is also the brain that remembers the thing you mentioned once 3 months ago, that notices when you're not quite yourself before you've admitted it to yourself. That will quietly turn your problem over with almost the same intensity it applies to its own, because to an overthinker, your pain genuinely registers as their own. The engine that makes the spiral so exhausting is the exact same engine that makes these people the ones you call when everything falls apart. But here's what that actually costs them. When you're that attuned to everyone around you, your own inner life gets tend to last. You're managing everyone else's emotional weather while your own forecast goes completely unread. You're the most in your head, and somehow also the most disconnected from what you actually need. And the brutal irony: the more you think, the further clarity moves. Remember Priya. By her late 20s, she had backup plans for her backup plans. She pre-wrote difficult conversations in her head until she'd memorized every possible version. She was extraordinary at her job because anticipating problems before they happened was a real valuable skill. But she was tired in a way a full night's sleep never touched. The kind of tired that's already there when you open your eyes in the morning. Because how do you explain that the most draining thing in your life isn't anything happening to you? It's the inside of your own head. What changed for Priya wasn't a hack or a routine or an app. It was one small shift in how she related to her thoughts. Instead of treating every thought like a problem demanding her immediate attention, she started treating them like weather. Something passing through. Something she could notice without having to stand in. The thoughts didn't stop coming. She just stopped treating every single one like a summons. And quietly, slowly, there was space again. Here's what all of this comes back to. Your mind isn't broken, it is loyal. Loyal to a younger version of you that genuinely needed this level of alertness just to feel okay. That kid made a very smart decision. Think faster, feel more, stay ahead of everything. And that decision made complete sense at the time. You just never got to tell them it was over, that they could rest now. The work isn't silencing your brain, it's teaching it slowly that uncertainty isn't the same thing as danger, that not having the answer yet doesn't mean something is wrong, that you can sit inside the not knowing without immediately needing to think your way out of it. You don't have to stop being the person who feels everything, notices everything, understands the room before the room understands itself. That part is worth keeping. You just have to stop mistaking the motion of thinking for the progress of thinking. Because you've been exhausted for a long time, and almost none of it has happened in a place anyone else can see. That 2 a.m. version of you, running investigations, replaying scenes, trying to solve things that were never meant to be solved at midnight, they're not weak. They're just loyal to a version of the world that no longer exists. And maybe the most important thing you do today isn't something you think about at all. Maybe it's just finally giving yourself permission to put it down. The mind that never stops deserves the one thing it never gives itself: a moment of peace. If you saw yourself in this video, you're not alone. Watch the next video on your screen to understand this even deeper, and subscribe for more psychology videos like this.